So hi, everybody. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for making it here. This is in many ways, for those who are participating, the step one in your PolyHack journey. And I'm glad that it's design. It gets to be design. So this event will help you kickstart your hack the right way. And you'll be learning how to implement the design thinking process from top to bottom and understand how to do things like conduct user research, gather insights, and frame your problem. And I'm really delighted to present to you three experienced UX designers and service designers who will unpack different case studies, different examples, step by step, and show you how to apply design thinking, show you how designers think, and how you can solve problems using that methodology. So let's have some introductions. I am Maria, for those who don't know, and I am this year's GDSC UX UI head. And let's move on to our speakers.
I can go first while it's loading. Hey everyone, I'm Swasti. I'm a service designer currently working at HSBC, and I'm an alumni of the School of Design at Hong Kong PolyU. So super happy to be here. Thanks, Maria.
Okay, I'm going to go next. Hi everyone, my name is Jenny. I'm currently the senior UX and UI designer at PayMe in HSBC. I have over 7+ years of experience in the UX, from telecom to e-commerce and also to fintech. So happy to see you all today.
Hi everyone, I'm Gayatri. I'm currently an experienced designer working at Linkupward. And previously I was also a PolyU alumni, studied product design in the School of Design, and I'm really happy to be here as well.
So Maria, we start?
Yeah, absolutely. Take it away.
So welcome everyone. Welcome to this design thinking crash course where we squeeze together all the methods and tools in this 2-hour workshop that we have with you all. All you need for the session is, and we recommend something to write with, grab a pen, grab a pencil and a notebook, because we're going to be doing some exercises with you and they're going to be very fast, so keep them ready.
Yeah, let's get everyone a minute to maybe arrange that if you need to. So grab a pen, pencil, notepads. I've got sticky notes, anything, something to write with and something to write on. And once you're done, maybe you can send in a done on the chat.
Okay, so, oh, nice. Okay, seems a lot of people are done. Ready? Let's go. So yes, we did our introduction. Okay, so my first sort of question as we kick off is that, I can't see, but Maria, maybe help me. How many people you see who raise their hands? How many of you would call yourself creative or think you're creative? You can raise your hands or use that raise your hand feature. Oh yes, Rakshit did that. Raise your hand feature on Zoom. Nice. Just 3 participants? Okay, wow, 5.
It's under reactions.
Oh, okay.
For those who are wondering where the hand is. Okay, 9 people so far. Do you think you're creative, guys? 10.
Yeah, would you call yourself creative? Okay, 10 out of 50. Sure. Maybe after this exercise, we'll see if you will still consider yourself creative. And I hope there will be more people. So I'm going to give you guys 45 seconds and you need to draw out the word that's going to be on the screen. Are you ready? Is everyone ready? Cool, let's get started. So baby, super easy. You can sketch super fast. Okay, next, tree. These are really easy ones, so I'm not going to give you much time. Next, house. And the last one, innovation. Now this is a bit tricky one, so I'm kind of excited to see what you guys are going to come up with. Three seconds to go. And stop. Okay, this is like fast Pictionary, drop your pens. If you guys are comfortable, would you want to show what you've drawn on your screens?
Would you want to show? No, we gotta show. We have a shy crowd going on here. Okay, I'm gonna set the Rachit says absolutely not. I'm gonna set the example and I'll share a drawing of mine. Which one do you want me to share?
Do you have all three of them or all four of them together?
Yeah, I can show them one by one.
Go ahead, go ahead.
If the blur allows. This is my baby.
Oh.
Yeah, that's my baby. The tree. Oh.
Okay. Okay, I see the tree with the curly bushes there.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and take my virtual background out. Or never mind.
How many of you have that curly tree with those round bushes as well?
Oh, I can see some drawings. Yes, I can see a lot of round bushes.
Yeah, and I see the house with that triangular roof as well.
Yes.
Cool. Okay. So basically the point of this exercise was that these were really simple words that we've kind of heard many times. We might have seen them in emojis as well. So they're really easy to draw out super fast. And what you've drawn right now is perfect. That's kind of the level of fidelity you need to bring when you're drawing out your ideas and you're sort of coming up with solutions for your design problem. Because oftentimes people think that to be creative is to be good at drawing, but that's sort of the misconception we want to break right before we start off, that with these tools, these methods of design thinking, actually you can all unlock that creative confidence in yourself. And you do not need to worry about your drawing skills so much. Whether you think you can draw or not, it has to be just good enough to communicate your idea across. So with that, I'm going to pass to Jenny.
Okay, cool. So thank you. So let's get started. So we are going to talk about design thinking. So first of all, I'm going to tell you all about what is design thinking. So design thinking is the essential ability to combine empathy, creativity, and rationality to meet users' need and drive business success. So the key here is that design thinking is an approach for you to solve the problem that focuses on understanding the people and their needs so that you could drive success to your business. So in the design thinking process, in the very first stage, you will try to think from the perspective of the user. So first of all, you will observe and develop empathy with the target audience. In this stage, you will discover, because you are standing from the point of view of the target audience, then you will look into the problems and discover the pain points. And after discovering the pain points, knowing what they are facing, then it comes up to the next stage, you will question and then analyze, then recognize the question and the problem and define the real statement for your project. You now understand what kind of actual problem that you're trying to solve. And then moving on next, you will, knowing about what kind of problem that you want to solve, then you will brainstorm the idea, how can we solve the problem? Then this is like an ongoing experimental stage. You will on and off crafting the sketches, on and off doing the testing to validate the result so that you could improve your design and get to the final product. Okay, next I'm going to pass to Swati to talk about the double diamond framework.
So one of the most common frameworks we use as designers is the double diamond framework that we use all throughout our projects from start to end. And then there are actually companies like IBM, Apple, Google, they sort of develop their own framework from this, but this is sort of like the skeleton that always remains. And the name, so the name double diamond sort of comes from how it's, from its shape, which is basically you have to diverge first. So you have to go wide, go in with an open mind, come up with as many possibilities as possible, and then converge, which is like narrow down to maybe one problem or one idea that you want to now work with. So this over two phases is what makes the double diamond. And we can divide it into 4 stages, which is the discover stage, define stage, develop, and deliver. In the discover stage, you're basically doing your research. So you have to go all broad. You have to go in with a really open mind, got to see all the problems that are out there. And when you come to the define stage, then you have to choose the problem you want to be solving. So you really need to narrow down. Again, when you come in the ideate stage, go in with an open mind. Do not put any limits on yourself. Come up with as many possibilities, as many ideas as you can. And then while you prototype and you test, you kind of come down to your final solution again. So though it looks quite linear, even as designers, when you're working with this framework, we actually go back and forth a lot. And that's totally fine. Oftentimes, maybe you might even miss a step or two because each project is different and the requirements are different. So you can modify this framework as per your project and do not feel bad about going back and forth because even as designers, we struggle with that. So with that, talking about the discover stage, Jenny.
Yes, so we get started to go through each stage. So here comes the first stage. This is the discovery stage. So in this stage, you need to look into the problems and identify the right problem to solve. So in the very first beginning, before you kickstart the project, we highly recommend you to frame your design challenge. The purpose of framing the design challenge is to articulate the problem that you're trying to solve, so that it helps you to define the scope to make sure that that is not too narrow or too broad. If you make this step right, you can make sure that the design problem is on the right track so that when you do research later on, it will be much more effective. If you're asking about how do we frame our design challenge, don't worry, we are going to provide a link with you after the sharing, which provided with list of questions that guiding you through how you can frame the design challenge. But first of all, today we'll go through an example with you to tell you to work together how we could frame the design challenge. Yep, so let's take an example here. So for example, if you want to frame your design challenge, for example, the question in your mind is, I want to improve the life of children. So you need to rephrase the problem. Usually the way we use to rephrase the problem is using the how might we statement. So you can see in the slide here, how might we improve the life of children? So this is the problem you're trying to solve. Next. So coming on to the next questions in your mind is, okay, so how might we improve the life of children? Then we need to look at the impact that we're trying to have. So looking at the word children, you might need to refine a bit, the scope a bit, not too broad, again, not too narrow again. So we might rephrase it in this way that, okay, what kind of children are we looking for? We are looking into. So the statement might be, we want very young children in low income communities. So this is your target audience. You narrow down to the target audience. This is a group of children. You narrow down target audience to thrive. So this is the impact that you want to bring to the problem. Write it down. Next. And then moving on next, think about the possible solutions because you're trying to improve the life of children. So thinking about possible solutions to improve the life of children. For example, you would say providing better nutrition, provide early childhood education centers, or provide them better education. So just list out all the possible solutions that might come into your mind. Next. And then finally, you need to look at the constraint and do more elaboration, more context about this problem statement. Like here, you're looking at the lives of children, then what kind of constraint that you might be facing. For example, one of the constraints may be the children are not in control of their circumstances, or some more thing that you would like to look into is, apart from children, I also want to look, at from the point of view from the parents as well. So we wanted to address a better solutions, not only for the children, but also for the parents as well. So you can see in the slide very clearly, you have a lot of ideas putting on your paper so that you could have at this moment, you will have a very clear structure, what kind of design challenge you are going to look into and all the details. So finally come to the last step, you might need to do a little tweak on your original problem statement. So the tweak on this problem statement, you may need to refine it a little bit more narrow based on your brainstorming ideas just now. Then you come to the statement that how might parents in low income communities ensure children thrive in first 5 years. So here you will see it comes more narrow and more solid for your design challenge. After doing this, then you are ready to go for the next stage as the research stage. So just now you have framed a very solid problem statement. Now you're going to the research. So in research, we have two types of research, qualitative research and quantitative research. So what are the difference? First of all, talking about qualitative research, the main purpose is for you to discover the ideas, look at the pain points that they are facing and discover the insights. So usually in a qualitative research, we will recruit a small sample of people, and with the researchers sitting there face-to-face talking to them, asking them open-ended questions to understand the user's behavior. This is qualitative research. And whereas for quantitative research, it's more on, first of all, you have a hypothesis. So you're more on looking for hard data to prove the assumptions, the hypothesis that you had, so that you could make a business decision. So how it works is usually for quantitative research, we would recruit large sample of people, asking them close questions so that you could generalize a large sample of data and the result would be more objective. Okay. So moving on next, after I just talk about qualitative and quantitative, we'll start with the qualitative first. In qualitative research, we have tons of research methods. For example, like what you see here, observation, in-depth interview, diary studies, focus group, case study research, tons of research methods. But again, I know because of time limit today, I'm not going to walk through every research method in details, but instead I'm going to only pick one research method, which is in-depth interview, which I think is the best research methods for you guys to look into later on in the hackathon. Okay, so talking about in-depth interview, I think most of you know that for interview is for the researcher to understand the participant, the target audience behavior and their preferences. So you could get a better understanding of how they think and also discover the pain points. Like the image here, usually in the research, conducting a research, we will have a moderator who is the key person to ask the questions. Also, we will have someone like a note taker. So he's like an observer standing behind the scene to take notes. And sometimes if we're afraid that we might miss out some points, we'll also have the audio recorder to record what the user said so that we might listen and analyze later on. So when you are conducting an in-depth interview, of course, you need to ask open-ended questions like what I mentioned just now. And you might think in your mind, how can I form effective questions in an in-depth interview? So there are a few points you need to take a look into. The first one is relevancy. So for sure, you need to, I would suggest you to go back to look at your topic again, make sure you understand the topic and make sure each question that you said is contributing to your main research topic. Yeah. And the second point is open-ended, because again, you're asking open-ended questions, you're discovering the insights. So avoid asking yes or no questions. When you're drafting the questions, always begin to think in the way that of 5W and 1H. So like who, what, why, when. Think from this perspective when you're setting up the questions. And the third point is clear. So of course, if you're asking the questions, try to make sure the questions are simple and clear. Make sure that there's no confusion when the interviewee is understanding the questions. One tip for you is, before you go on for an interview, go for a pilot test first to make sure that people really understand your questions before you really go on for a real interview. And the last thing is unbiased, because you want to get accurate result. So make sure that when you're setting up the questions, avoid any judgment assumptions. Otherwise, your questions will be misleading and your results won't be accurate. Okay, so I have prepared a small exercise for you guys. I'm going to show you some questions, and then you guys can give your answer in the chat, telling me that whether this answer is good or bad. Just type good and bad in the chat. Okay, so everyone get ready? Okay, ready, then we get started. Okay, first question is, for example, imagine that you're doing a project that is related to gym experience. If you are asking the interviewee questions like, how good was your experience at the gym? Do you think this is a good question? Type your answer, good or bad.
Okay, most people are saying bad.
Good.
Leading. Okay, most people are saying bad. Does anyone want to talk about why? Does anyone want to justify their stance? Why do you think it's bad or neutral? You can feel free to switch your mic on.
Yeah. Or you can type your answer in the chat if you want.
Yeah. We're too shy, which seems like our crowd today is. Guys, come on, we have to be proactive. We got to be interacting with each other. We're all friends. It's all chill. It's not so
bias.
formal.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Bias, I see something. Someone
Bias.
said bias, abstract. Anyone want to tell me more feedback or more opinion? Okay. Okay. Yep. I think every one of you is very clever. Yes, this is not a good question. This is a biased question. Very obviously, because you're asking good. The word good is a positive adjective. So avoid doing any positive or negative adjective in the question. So obviously in this question, if you're seeing how good, then I might avoid saying any negative about the gym experience. So if you're asking me how to rephrase this question again, then I will show in this way. How did you feel about your experience at the gym? This is a better question because there's no bias, no subjective adjective in it. So this is a very neutral question. Okay, next questions. Okay, topic 2. You're doing a design project about selfie. So do you post a lot of selfies on your Facebook page? Is this a good or bad question? Now tell me.
You can share in the chat.
Wow, bad, bad.
Everyone is saying. Okay, anyone wants to share their their justification?
Yeah.
A lot of is a bit unclear. Okay. Okay. Everyone seems to think the phrase "a lot of" is vague, which is why it's a bad question. Okay. Interesting.
Okay. Okay, cool. Again, yes, this is a bad question, but I would say this is not a very terrible question, but you could set it in a better way. The reason why this is not a good question is, first of all, because you're doing an interview, avoid asking closed-ended questions, always ask open-ended questions. So starting one, do you is not good, just a yes or no. Some people may say a lot of is a little bit misleading, but I would say it's neutral. It depends. If the project is about a lot of selfie, if your project maybe before you start to do the research, you found that people are doing a lot of selfie on their Facebook page, then you can ask such questions. I mean, it depends on the assumptions that you made, and also it depends before you go for the interview. Of course, you did a lot of research behind that. So it all depends the research and the assumptions that you made before. So I would say a lot of is still okay if you ask a lot of, but do you is not good. So if you rephrase it once again, I will rephrase it this way. On what occasions do you find yourself taking selfies, and when do you decide to post them on your social media page? The reason why this is a good question, first of all, this is an open-ended questions. And again, when we are setting up questions, try to avoid too narrow and too broad. You need to know the scope of it. So this question is good because to a certain extent, it provides a detailed data so that you could get a more detailed information behind the questions. Yep. Okay. So next. Okay, very good. Thanks for everyone participating the game just now. So again, asking open-ended questions, no worries if you don't know how to set up the questions. We will provide you a link later on, which is the guided questions to let you know how to set up the questions. Okay, so moving on part 2, which is the quantitative research. So again, quantitative research is to recruit a large sample of people to get the hard data. So research methods include survey, secondary data, questionnaire. So today we only focus on questionnaire. So questionnaire is a set of questions which includes a mix of closed-ended questions and open-ended questions. Again, the good thing about the questionnaire or quantitative research is that in a limited time, you can gather a large amount of data. And because the sample is large and you ask about its close-ended questions, so you will have less chance of bias. And if respondents, they concerned about the privacy issue, it's good for them because they don't need to review the identity as well. Next. Thank you. So quantitative research questionnaire. So if you're setting up a questionnaire, usually even we designers, we use something, sometimes we use the Google form. It's something that is simple and quite easy to use, and also it's free of charge. So asking closed-ended questions means that you need to ask the respondents to choose from a distinct set of predefined responses. So take an example. For the questionnaire, you will ask about closed-ended questions, for example, like yes/no questions, rating scale, multiple choices that is related to rating the scale and the likeliness, and also multiple questions asking you the rank order, and also checklist type. For example, you ask multiple questions at the same time. So I will take a pause here. I see someone asking questions. maybe I will answer your questions first. So Tommy is asking, what is the difference between a survey and a questionnaire? Okay, so this is a very good question. Well, they are very similar, but I would say a survey is more on, usually when you do a survey, you will ask closed-ended questions. And for questionnaire, you will ask a mix of closed-ended questions and open-ended questions. I would say both of them, the purpose is getting the hard data. But if you are leaning on more likely discovering some more habits and behavior of the target audience, I would suggest you to choose a questionnaire, because questionnaire somehow you could ask open-ended questions, so you're able to know about the more behavior behind the users. Yeah, survey is more like real hard data, yes or no, multiple rankings, etc. Yep. So anyone has any questions? If no, I'm going to, yeah, no problem, Tommy. So if no, I'm going to pass it to Swasti to talk about the define stage.
All right. So now that when you're in the define stage, your main goal is to define and narrow down to the problem you want to be solving now. Before you get down to synthesizing your research, I guess, like Jenny mentioned, it's very important that you now are very clear about who you are designing for. From the research, it might be fresh in your mind, all the user groups that will be affected by your the problem or who are going to be reached by your project. So it's really good that you do this 10-minute quick exercise with your teammates so everybody's on the same page about who is your target user and who you're going to be designing for. Ideally, yes, like you can come together with your teammate, write all the people who are going to be affected by your project, and then separate it out into direct and indirect users. Ideally, you should only have one or maybe maximum 2 direct users. And this is just good to keep in mind, because later when you'll come up with the ideas for solutions, you can actually target it towards this particular user's needs and their problem. So that's the first part of the define stage. And the next, which is the biggest chunk of the define stage, is how do you synthesize your research? So now that you have all this information that you've learned when you did either through interviews or surveys or the questionnaires, you want to come down to one final problem that you want to be solving now and start to create solutions for later. For that, we can break it down into a couple of steps. The first one would be gathering all your learnings from the research. So you must have got a lot of information. You might have taken notes, photos, data from the research. And in this first step, it's basically gather your team around and everyone sort of on post-it notes, could be digital ones or physical post-it notes, put down your top 5 learnings or your insights or the top 5 problems that you've come across. 5 is a good number because it's not too many and not too less as well. After that, actually do a playback with your team. So everybody is aware about whatever they've learned in the research, and take turns to share with your teammates whatever you have written down in those post-it notes. So as mentioned, you can use, if your teammates and you are in the same location and can meet up, would be great. You can do it on a physical whiteboard, but Miro is a really good digital whiteboard as well. We use it at work and it's cheap and quite easy. I think it's free as well. So easy to get started on. So now that you have, you have all your insights and the problems, you put it all on that board. It's time that you start finding some patterns and themes in all of these problems. So in this 15-minute exercise, what you're going to do is, again, look through whatever post-it notes have been put up. Have a try to see if you can see any patterns that are emerging. Is there a consistent problem that you see that's coming up again and again? What do you think is the most important problem? So you can already sort of start seeing that. And then while discussing with your teammates, try to put these problems in clusters, similar problems or similar insights together under similar themes. Though a time limit is good, so 10 minutes is good enough to do the sort of clustering of the insights into themes. Do not stop until everyone is actually on the same page, because you want to take everybody on board regarding the sort of the final problem that you're going to solve later. So ideally, after this step, your board should look something like this picture, which is like all of the post-it notes, the insights, sort of grouped together under themes. Now comes the last step, which is silent dot voting. And this is something very common in the UX design practice as well. It's basically that from the themes that you have sort of clustered, now you need to vote, which is the most important problem to your user, and also which you feel is coming up again and again, that should be a priority and should be solved. So every person should get 3 votes. You can use circle dots like these. And while not discussing, so this has to be silent, so you are not influenced by what other people are thinking. Put your vote down on the most important themes or the problems that you feel you want the team to go forward with. And count the number of votes, and hopefully you will have a clear winner. But if in the situation that there is no clear winner, of which is the key problem, do spend time with your teammates to discuss and get everybody on board with that one. So yes, like after these 3 steps, your board should be looking something like this. You have your insights clustered into themes, and now you have voted on the most important problem or the most important theme that you want to be moving forward with. So yes, in summary, the define stage, basically what you're doing is gathering all those learnings, all those insights, all those problems that you found in research. You're finding themes, so you're putting the similar themes together. And then you vote among your team. So everyone gets sort of like an equal say on which problem you want to proceed with. And lastly, yes, you have the final problem, which you can then revise and sort of make it better, reiterate with the steps that Jenny had talked about earlier in the frame the design challenge part. And yes, that's sort of the end of the define stage. Do any of you have any questions about this one?
Feel free to send it in the chat or even unmute yourself and ask. Any questions about this gathering of insights process and coming to the main theme or main problem that you want to solve? It's a very, very important part of the design thinking process. Choosing the right problem. No questions, I guess. So we can break for a couple of minutes. Take a breather, drink some water, get a snack if you need to, then we'll move forward. Okay, we can reconvene at around 7:51. Okay, I think we can resume.
Sure. Is Swasti on?
Yep. 1 sec.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay, now we're moving on to the develop phase. But yeah, thank you guys for sticking around. I know Saturday night, we promised the last 2 stages are still going to be as exciting as the first 2. So going on to the develop stage, which is to generate ideas and also evaluate the solutions. So let's look at generating ideas. So when you want to generate ideas, you probably are thinking, okay, let's do like a brainstorming session. You know, you would gather all your teammates. Next slide, please. Yeah, you gather all your teammates, you get all your tools, you'd be in a room, kind of like this image. You turn on your creative brain, you have like a particular time frame that you want to like come up with the most awesome ideas for your project. But then you feel like after all that, you still feel a bit lost. Maybe you feel like you didn't come up with the best idea, or you came up with ideas that probably already exist, or it's just not hitting the mark. Or maybe you have too many ideas and you have too many great ideas and you don't know like how to proceed. So the thing with this is you're kind of missing a very key ingredient, which is setting very simple rules. And that is the key to a very successful brainstorming session. So why do we need these rules? Essentially because, next slide, please. When we want to define brainstorming, it is actually a specific group exercise which uses simple rules to help participants stay in a productive, non-judgmental, highly divergent mode while producing many ideas. So here we can see that in order to kind of foster creative thinkings, you might actually need to set some really simple rules. And that is very contrary because of course, like you want to break the rules, you want to like think outside the box, but to get very creative out of the box ideas, you would need to know what the box is. So let's see how we can set these rules. So setting simple rules. These are like some rules that were kind of created as a guide by IDEO, which you can also see on the link on the bottom later on if you want to read more about it. But essentially, it encourages the team members to defer any sort of judgment, to encourage wild ideas, to build on ideas on top of the other ones, to stay focused on the topic and remember to be visual, go for quantity, not quality, and make sure to have one conversation at a time. So now that you have all these simple rules, how do we decide the structure, or how can we like have this sort of structure where we can like think many ideas or go for quantity and then know like which idea to proceed with? So we can look into there are many methods of brainstorming, but because of time constraint, we're going to look at the one method, which is called the Crazy Eights. Yeah, it's a weird name, but Crazy Eights is actually a very popular brainstorming method, which is a fast sketching exercise that challenges people to sketch 8 distinct ideas in 8 minutes. And the goal is to push beyond your first idea. Frequently, it's the least innovative, and to generate a wide variety of solutions to your challenge. And it doesn't need to take too long. It just needs 8 minutes. And you can do it first individually, and then as a group, you can brainstorm together. And also, just a reminder, again, from our icebreaker, as you remember, your sketches don't have to be incredibly beautiful or detailed. It just has to communicate your idea. You can write, you can annotate, anything you need just to get the idea across. Yes, exactly, as Maria is pointing out. It could just be like a tree or a baby with, literally anything. Yeah. So how do we actually do this Crazy Eights exercise? So each member kind of folds their piece of paper into 8 different sections and sets a timer for 8 minutes. If you're doing a remote Crazy Eights workshop, you could just as easily just get 8 stickies on a Miro or any whiteboard tool that you have. So it's super easy. And then once you have the timer set for 8 minutes, individually, each team member sketches or writes whatever you want, one idea in each rectangle, trying your best until all the sections are filled and pens down after the timer. And now that you have these 8 ideas, how do we turn them into solutions? So we kind of go around the table, each team member sharing their ideas one by one, seeing what ideas you've come up with. And then kind of like the earlier stage, you kind of then start to see a pattern, and then you try to cluster similar ideas together. And also, like in the previous stage, you would go around doing a silent voting and deciding on which is the best group, or seeing which team member has given the most vote for a particular group. And then finally, whichever group has the most votes can go on to the next stage, which is going into the testing of the solution. And just as a summary, like what we saw, so first is to generate all the solutions. So like an incredible amount of like quantity of solutions that you have, ideas that you have. Then you group the like-minded ideas, and then you name each group, give them a theme name, and then you vote, and then you proceed with the most voted one. And yeah, handing over to Jenny now, who will talk about deliver.
Sorry, at this stage, does anyone have any questions? Anything that you're confused about, that you want to clarify? The develop stage. Okay, we have a question.
Oh, okay. What does go for quantity than quality mean? Okay, great question. Thank you, Matthew. So basically, when you go for quantity, you try to put down whatever that thing comes to your mind. So you're not like thinking about like the feasibility of it. So if I'm thinking like how to improve the lives of children, or like improving the gym experience, for me, quantity would be putting down every single idea that comes to my mind, rather than going into much detail and thinking about, oh wait, but that doesn't really, the time constraint or the money constraint, like not thinking about it. It could be as crazy as it needs to be, or as stupid as it needs to be. It does not have to be the most incredible idea. So that is why we want to push for more quantity. And then once we start clustering, we can then go for the more quality of idea. And I hope that answers your question. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. So now we're at the last stage, which is the deliver, where you create your prototype, test it out, and finalize that design. So I think the first part of it is creating really quick, dirty prototypes that you can share with your user and test it out, so you can validate and then fix it again. So yeah, once you've determined now which idea you want to go forward with, it's time to start building it. Look at the features, look at the details of it. Depends on what is sort of, are you making a physical prototype? Are you working on something digital? You can use any of the prototyping tools. For digital, we often recommend paper and sketch wireframes or digital wireframes. And again, like G said earlier, it does not have to be perfect. It does not have to be pretty, but it just should communicate your idea and enough to get you some good feedback. So Jenny, you want to take over?
Yep, thank you. So just now we talked about the prototype. So we have 2 types of prototype. So first type is the paper prototype. It's like what you're looking at this image. Very simple, just draw your ideas on a paper and test it out. Okay, so a paper prototype, again, is not about the quality, it's about the quantity. So you don't need to be perfect. Just just do some roughly sketch on a paper and just go and test it out, it's fine. If you have some questions about, okay, how can we build the paper prototype, don't worry. We have a link here which show you the template of the paper prototype. You can download later on to do the paper prototype. So this is a video about how they do the prototype.
So your task now is to open the My EE app.
Okay.
Someone there. Cool. Nice, nice.
And now your task is to register and log in.
Okay.
Then you complete the task. The next task is to remove the minutes tile from your home screen.
Okay. So, oh. I have that one. Cool.
Well done. Your next task is to place that add £10 top up tile to your home screen.
That's top up, nice one to squeeze. Back.
Then your next task is to rearrange the tiles on your home screen as you see fit.
Okay. Right, so let's, I use this all the time, so I want to move that. Can I move it to the top left? And then minutes allowance, mobile data. Yeah, probably. Can I change these around? No. Just these top ones. Okay. Oh, sorry. So cheap. It's cool.
Well done, you've completed the task.
Good.
Okay, yeah. So this is how you do a paper prototype. Quite fun, right? So you just draw all your ideas and all the blocks on the paper, then you can go and test it out. Okay, so next one we're going to talk about is the digital prototype. So this one is a little bit more high level compared with the paper prototype, of course. This is digital, so you could see, again, don't need to be perfect, just black and white is okay. So you will see just black and white and draw the blocks, then you can go out and test. So the two that we're going to use for creating the digital prototype will be, we use Mural, Figma, or even Keynote. Keynote is very simple, just make it like a slideshow. So you could test it out. So again, we will show a video about how to do a digital prototype. Yeah. So you will see comparatively, of course, digital is much more high level because you could be able to see the interactions and also the animation, how you scroll. So I would say it's more realistic compared with paper prototype. But again, you will see, don't need to be fancy. Just make it black and white with the blocks, just to get a basic idea how the framework and the architect works. Okay, I think we can take a pause here. Yeah, thank you. And then next. Yep, thank you. So just now I have introduced you guys about paper prototype and the digital prototype. So let's do a quick summary here. So the good thing about doing the paper prototype is of course simple, fast, and very cost effective. But I think the bad side is because the paper prototype is less realistic. So a lot of constraint. You can hardly reflect the interaction and the animation between screens. You couldn't test this part out. Whereas for the digital prototype, good and bad thing is like the opposite of paper prototype. The good thing about digital prototype is it looks more real, so that you could test out the interaction and the animations. And also because you already built a template, so after the user testing, if you want to change, it's easier to edit on it because you could edit based on the existing template you did before. And the bad thing is, of course, it takes time. It's more realistic. It takes time for you to explore around the software and to do all the interactions and animations. So I was to sum up the prototype and the prototype that I just mentioned, I would say one key takeaway is remember the key point of doing a prototype is to make sure that your design works and to validate which part of your design needs to improve so that you could come out to the final product. So I would suggest you, because I know given that your hackathon has only 2 weeks, so I would suggest you guys to grab something fast and simple. Probably paper prototype would be a good fit for you because you could test it out very quickly and easily. And then very nice, just now you created the prototype. Now it's time for you to test them out. So after creating the prototype, you can reach out to the target audience to ask them questions. So here you gather the feedback and validate your ideas, whether it works or not. Usually the duration, it takes around 60 to 90 minutes. And ideally we suggest you recruit 5 users. It's a good number for you to test out your design, whether it works or not. So before you set up the questions, I would highly suggest you to go back and look into your questions and your problem and your assumptions again. Yes, and then after that, you brainstorm the idea, comes to the second step, you might think about some core features that you believe it could help to solve the problem. Then you define the few core problems that you want to test out whether it works or not. And then moving on to third step is based on the core features that you just listed out, you set up missions and set up tasks and questions, get ready for your user testing. And then the final step is you go to find the user, conduct the user testing, observe and ask them questions. Next. If you are, when you are doing the test, we have some tips for you. I think rule number 1 is you need to think aloud. Encourage the participants to speak up when they are doing the test. They need to, while they are using and interacting your product, they need to tell you about what kind of thoughts comes to their mind. Encourage them to do so. And the second thing is observation. I think observation is very important in a user testing. This is because when you take a pause, silent, you observe, then you will find a lot of insight, especially when they are doing the mission. Don't disturb them. Let them finish the mission first. Observe, take a pause. You will see a lot of interesting findings. For example, why user take a pause here? It seems like they got stuck, and then what decision that they come afterwards. So after a bit of observation, when they finish the task, then you can follow up with some questions, asking them, so what is your thought about that page? How was your experience using the product? Is it difficult? Maybe you can ask them to rate. And what's your thought? Encourage them to share the thoughts with you. Okay, next. And after you asking them the questions, I think what's next is you can also follow up some in-depth questions to understand the motivation behind the interactions and the behavior. So if you are asking the questions, always think about why they do this behind the user interactions. For example, you can ask questions like, why did you navigate this page instead of the home page? Or why did you click this button? What motivates you to click this, etc. Okay.
So I guess, yes, once you've done the testing, you're pretty much going to get some really good feedback from their users. And it's always advisable to use that feedback and try to refine your prototype as much as you can. And that's how you create your final solution. So with that, you sort of mastered the double diamond framework of design thinking. To summarize super quickly, so yes, you start off your discover stage by doing some research. You go in with an open mind. You want to talk to the users. You want to like understand what their problems are with a very open mind, so go broad. When you come to the define stage, you want to find the insights from the research and sort of narrow down towards which main problem you want to be solving. Again, when you come down to the develop stage, you want to generate as many ideas as you can. As they mentioned before, does not have to be pretty, just go for quantity over quality. And because eventually when you come to the delivery part, you're going to do the prototyping, you're going to do the testing, and it'll really help you narrow down towards what a good final solution will look like. So we found this really good case study where Uber Eats had applied design thinking process, and they solved one of the problems that their drivers used to face in the US, which is finding parking and locating entries to restaurants. So they leveraged these design thinking methods to solve this problem. They started off with the discovery and research. So the team of designers and researchers, they actually went on the ground, conducted interviews, followed those drivers through their workday to sort of understand where all those pain points are coming from and what are their pain points. From that, they did this workshop where they gathered all those pain points, and then they found there was this most commonly occurring problem, which was the main issue of finding the entries to restaurants that the drivers were constantly facing. And with that, they started brainstorming features for on the Uber Eats driver app on how they can solve that issue. Then they went out and actually tested that solution with the real users who are the drivers, did field testing of their prototypes, got their feedback and refined it. So I guess one good takeaway from this case study is that the final solution that they created was actually sort of made really by taking the users' problems and constantly testing with them their feedback in consideration. And this is, yeah, the final sort of prototype that they had.
Yeah, so basically the issue is they weren't able to know where do I park to go and then pick up the food. So it shows you exactly where to go and even gives you some visual clues as to how to get there, what landmarks are nearby. Yep, pretty cool.
So because we've now bombarded you with so many tools and methodologies for one evening, you can actually find out more about them and also access all of these resources on IDEO Design Kit. They have all these free methods and tools that they explain really well. And there's also the Stanford Design Thinking bootleg, which talks a lot about these methods and tools as well. And with that, any questions then?
Feel free to ask questions.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I think most non-programming gods like me, CS folks here, will agree with my concern. When we come up with prototype ideas, we often put our lack of technical skills as a constraint to our creativity. Like, say, for example, in the finding theme stage that you all mentioned previously, we can easily think of super fancy ideas and solutions, but then we'll refrain from proposing it because we always think that, oh, we're not that skilled or we don't have enough time to implement it. So, and I think this is an exclusive problem to us CS folks, especially non-programming gods like me. So how do you address this problem in this design framework? Thank you.
Jenny, you want to take this one?
Okay, I guess I can take that one. So yeah, thank you for your question. So I completely understand. I think sometimes we might want to not go forward with a solution because we think it might be too crazy or too advanced. But I think that's when it's great to have those ideas, but that's when you need to kind of take a step back and see what the constraints of the project are and what is deemed as feasibility in the project. Because once you start mapping out like who your customers are, what their current need is, and seeing like what constraints you have, your technical or otherwise capabilities, then you come up with the best possible solution. Of course, like there might be many solutions that are better suited, but what right now is achievable is something that you would present first. And if possible, and if you feel like you have the capability, then you could also do like a future roadmap saying that, okay, stage 1, we have this based on our current, whatever we can produce, which is feasible for us. Stage 2, in like, you know, these 4 years, we are more capable, we will have more capabilities in the tech or creative side, then we can, you know, come up with this solution, kind of develop the solution to the future stage, which yeah, might be like the one that you mentioned, which is like, you know, really crazy and something that's not achievable at this stage. But you can do like a roadmap, but it's always advisable to, you know, whatever is your constraints, you deliver the solution based on those constraints. If that makes sense, or yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Quickly add, yeah, obviously with any problem that you're going to try to solve, you have some certain constraints. You have time constraints, personnel constraints, money constraints. But the idea is in that stage of like trying to develop your ideas, you want to follow that diamond shape. So in the beginning, you want to do as many ideas as you can. So in that stage, you don't want to limit your thinking, but oh well, this is too impractical, this is too high tech, this is not achievable. In that stage, you just want to free your mind from everything and say, oh, this is cool, this is possible, maybe we could do this, or what if this was the solution? You come up with a lot of different crazy ideas, and then after that, you kind of narrow down and say, hey, well, this one maybe it's not so practical. We can you have to sort out then afterwards. So it's just that in the beginning, you want to come up with as many ideas as possible without putting yourself in that box with all the constraints, right? Would you guys agree, speakers?
Yeah, that was very nicely put.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. Like, I haven't thought about the roadmap thing. Like, yeah, I think it'll work, the roadmap thing. So I'll like think of crazy ideas first, and then we'll like look at what expertise we have. Then we set like the scope in this like stage. So yeah, I think it's a good idea. Thanks.
No worries. Yeah, exactly. I think even in the real world, like when we try to come up with solutions, it's not always feasible to do the best possible solution. So then we kind of go in stages and see what we have, what we can do right now, and maybe what we can do in the future. Yeah. Any more questions?
I see a question here. Maybe I can take this. So Stephen is asking, prototyping only for UI designing validation? I would say yes, because in the user testing that I just mentioned, it's more like a usability testing out whether your well, hardly, because when you're talking about UI, it's more about the visual crafting of things beautifully. But I would say prototyping, the main idea is to test out the structure and the interaction, whether they understand why you design it in this way, and whether your solution is really solving the problem. So I would say half-half. On one point, to a certain extent, of course, if you do it beautifully, you can also test out the UI. But I would say before you go for that step, I would suggest you, before going for a beautiful UI, a beautiful visual, you need to take a step back and also test out whether the navigation and the core value really solve the user problem. This is the main idea. Yeah.
Any other questions? Remember, these techniques are going to help you in your first week of discovering your problem statement and finding out insights from your research. So if you have any questions, now is the best time to ask because we have 3 experienced people here to answer them all. Okay, we have another question. Will time be a limit to creativity or solution brainstorming?
Okay, I can take that one. So thank you for your question. I'm not sure what you mean by limit. I think having a time limit is essential in a brainstorm activity because you can go on for hours and hours and keep thinking about ideas. But what is said is that you can spend 2 hours or you can spend like 1 hour. If you're coming up with ideas, it's best to have a certain time limit and try to get as many ideas down as possible. So the kind of going back to the earlier question we had, setting a really a time constraint and then going for quantity of ideas rather than quality. And yeah, I hope that answers your question. Or
Okay.
okay, great.
I think we'll take one more question. Anyone? I just wanted to add, give a small piece of advice because you guys in the hackathon have a very limited amount of time. After the first week, once you've gathered your insights and you've done that whole process, I would suggest trying to make your prototypes as fast as possible so you can get at least one session, one block of testing done with a couple of people, and then you have at least one time to iterate your project in the span of that last week. So that would be my advice concerning the time constraint. Make sure you have time for at least one testing session. Not one individual testing session, but one time that you actually test with a couple friends, couple users, and then you're able to make changes based on what you find out in the tests. Yeah. So if no other questions, we can wrap up. Okay, we have a question. As for the brainstorming section, how can we start or to be innovative if we have little experience? How can we start to be innovative if we have little experience?
Yeah, I think, okay, so I'll take that one. Thank you for the question, Joseph. So the idea for the brainstorming is that no idea is great or bad. It's just putting down as many ideas as possible, thinking about every single possibility, putting down 100 ideas if needed. And then once you start seeing what your other team members have put down, if each member has 10 different ideas in a very short period of time, and you go for the maximum amount of quantity that you can. And then when you start looking at what others have, you have different perspectives on how different minds approach the same problem. And once you have that and you start seeing patterns, and then you start seeing the themes, then you can kind of come up with more innovative solutions, because it's not, because for brainstorming, it's nothing to do with experience or how well you know the topic. Is just how you approach the problem and how different perspectives approach the problem and finding that common point. So definitely not a bad thing if you have little experience or you have no clue what's going on. It's just combining different perspectives together. And I hope that answers your question, or if you have any further questions.
Actually, yeah, adding to that, I think even when we're in design school, they always tell us that the rule of thumb is do not go with your first few ideas, because sometimes they're the most safe and the basic ones. It's like when you get your mind running, is the ideas that always come after, let's say the first 4 or 5 ones that are actually the good ones. So it's okay. I think you need to really exercise that. Maybe it doesn't come naturally, but yeah, do not go for that safe first idea that you had.
Yeah.
And also like in like when we look at like when we working or in real life, like we like I obviously had this perspective that I cannot say an idea unless it's like sounds smart, but actually that's not really the case. Like I've heard people like say really random ideas and like it doesn't even make sense in the context or it's not even feasible, but they just say it because then you kind of bounce off ideas each other and you will get there somewhere. You don't have to get there right now, but it's a process. And once you follow the process, you'll reach the solution in the end. So you don't even need to know what the answer is or if that your sole idea that you say in a brainstorming session is what's going to be implemented, because that's not what's going to happen. Like you're going to have an idea, many people are going to have ideas, you're going to combine them together and then you're going to test it. And then the user's feedback will turn it into another solution. So it's a very like uncertain process. So you will never know what idea you're going to have.
Yeah, in my experience, even we don't have much ideas, at the end, always the final solution is a mix of ideas that come up from several people. So just get it together and talk to each other so that you could find inspiration.
Awesome. I think let's wrap it up. Okay, we have one last question, then we wrap up. When do we need to validate an innovative, crazy idea functionally? After the brainstorming stage or after voting or when else?
Actually,
yeah.
Sorry,
you can take that, Swasti. Yeah, sure, go for it.
No, I think ideally validation comes only when you give it out to the user, because their feedback really changes the whole thing. So that's why we do a lot of testing and get that validation. Like, because in maybe when you're making it, you really love it. You love this idea, you want to go forward with it. But when the person who's actually going to use it tells you that, okay, sorry, it does not work, or it's completely not friendly, that's actually the best validation. So yeah, like I would say after or when you're actually testing it out with users is the best time to validate.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, like if you are talking about like how do we narrow down or make sure like a crazy idea or the theme of ideas is not too crazy and it's like something that's doable, it's like actually in the silent dot voting procedure when you team members, like once you have like the best most voted group, you start to think about the constraints and start to refine your idea from there. And what you have then is a hypothesis. So this is what you think is the best solution based on all the ideas that you all have had. And as Swasti mentioned, then you start validating with the user. So the user is going to tell you whether this idea actually functionally works or not. And if it doesn't, you kind of go back and refine.
Okay, awesome. I hope that answered your question, Stephen.
So in fact, we need some Q&A during voting. Do you mean like Q&A between the members? Okay. So during the voting, once each member has voted for the best group, that's like a silent thing. So you don't really discuss anything. But once you have narrowed it down and you know which theme or which group has the most votes and the team agrees on, then you sort of have the discussion, or I would say it's more of a discussion rather than a question and answer, where you decide like how to go forward with that idea or how to refine it so that you can start making the prototype and test it.
Yeah, and also an add on to this is during the voting, after the voting, usually it comes to the stage, because in the voting part, maybe you won't think about too much. You just think, okay, this idea is good, so I go for it. So usually after the voting, we will sit down, discuss, and look at the constraint that we have, and then look at the constraint and also the voting numbers to decide which idea we are going to test out.
And yeah. Okay. I think there's another question.
Okay, this is going to be our last question. After this, I can pass on whatever questions you guys can send on the WhatsApp group and on the Discord group, and I'll pass them on. You guys will give me some answers, and I'll get back to all of you guys who have any extra questions. All right? Okay, so last question. if we need users to validate, who can act as the role in our project in this hackathon? Okay, who wants to take this one?
I'm not sure I'm understanding it right. I'm not sure what you mean by who can act as the role on our project in this hackathon.
I think the question is who can act as the user?
Who can act as the user? You would need to find people who are not on your team because your team will be biased. So your team will know what the solution is. So whatever actions they do, they will know because they help create it. So you will need to find people who are not part of your team. So whoever your target audience is outside. Yeah.
Yeah, so highly recommend you reach out to the real target audience to test it out because you're solving the problem of them. So you need to reach out them to ask them, do I really solve your problem?
Yeah, and I understand maybe the target audience is students. So I guess you guys are the target users, but if you are creating an idea, don't test it like internally. Like definitely go outside, ask your friends, and then test it. As someone who's never seen this before.
Yeah.
Yep, I think that pretty much answers the question. Now we can wrap up, and I will send this presentation, which has links embedded in it to all kinds of resources that you've seen in order to actually carry out the different processes and activities that you've seen today within your own hackathon teams. I'll send it on the Discord and on the WhatsApp channels. So, yep. Thank you so much for attending. And have a good night, everyone.